can't adapt to that simplicity and weirdness, like when you get a kid who's going to look at you when you talk about separation or some of these, like, you know, like Franz Bosch talks about, like, the body doesn't care what cue you use. Like, you have to figure out, like, it's true. Like, you could say anything, but if it makes sense to the kid, it makes sense.
May I have your attention, please?
Give him a heater.
Now listening to Clear the Mechanism.
The Robby Rose Show.
The Robby Rose Show.
What up, guys? It's your boy and your host, Robby, rolling on another episode of The Robby Rose Show. Today we have Ryan Johansen on episode 41. If you're curious as far as who Ryan Johansen is, go ahead and go over to Instagram and type in Johansen_baseball. That's JOHANSEN. Do yourself a favor. He actually runs a really cool Instagram page. But it's going to be a good podcast for you. Following another hitting side of things within the podcast realm. Wow, I went back-to-back hitters. That was bold strategy on my part. It's actually funny because looking at Ryan's page, I thought he was a hitter, but apparently he was a pitcher. And it's funny how he talks about underachieving in his baseball career, but how that kind of led to him being more applicable in his coaching realm. Because, I mean, I quote him when I say this, but he says, "Be the coach I wish I had." And I think that's totally cool because if you're a coach and you have playing experience, to put yourself in that similar situation where it's like, okay, when I played, what did I want my coach to be like? Or how did I want my coach to respond to me? And I think that gives you a whole different perspective as far as how to mentor young athletes. And I mean, it definitely shows in Ryan, like the way he talks and the way he, the way he relates to his athletes. I think that's, it's no accident. That's why he's having success with his guys. And later in the podcast, we dive a little bit deeper into the types of tools that he uses, similar to episode 40 with Tim Gibbons, as far as the tools that he's utilizing to accumulate a bunch of data and apply that to his athletes while using proper verbiage. There's a pretty cool blurb in this podcast that you'll catch when Ryan talks about his cues and his verbiage. That's a little bit about what the soundbite was just about. I thought it was pretty fascinating how you can kind of relate in ways that you speak to younger athletes. And when I say younger, Ryan and I specifically talk about like ages, from T-ball up, how to relate to those guys, what cues should you use, and how to really optimize the athlete. So again, we talk a lot about, different tools, different things to better yourself as a hitter or even as a pitcher, just as an athlete in general. And you can find all of those tools, all the links to those specific things that we talked about in the show notes. And if you're having trouble, I get a lot of Instagram messages actually of people saying like, hey, you say show notes a lot. What does that mean? So I'm just going ahead and I'm going to give you guys exactly what that looks like as far as what to enter into like your web browser if you're really struggling with the specific show notes. So if you go to like Safari, and I know this is totally off like what you usually do to listen to your podcast, but if you go to Safari and you type in soundcloud.com/The Robby Rose Show /Ryan Johansen, that will take you right to the SoundCloud player where I host the particular episode /podcast. And then when you go there on your internet browser, you'll see a little tiny blurb. It'll probably say like in episode 41 of the Robby Rose Show, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll see it a little bit down below that, show more. And all you do is just click show more. and it brings down a whole list of things. And then towards the bottom of it, it'll say links talked about in this episode, and then it'll have all those links, and you can straight up just click them. If you're listening to it on your iPhone, just click that link and it'll take you right to the specific page that you're interested about. So I like to do it just because there's a lot of fascinating things that we talk about, and we don't sometimes go into super details. So it'll give you a better understanding of really the basis of what we're talking about. For instance, we talk about JD Martinez and the way he really evolutionized his swing. And I specifically say I'll link a YouTube video to that in the show notes. So if you're interested about that video, go ahead and go to those show notes and click that video and watch it. So now you get a better understanding. As far as the tools that he used, if you're a coach listening to this, or even if you're a player or you're a player's dad and you want to, maybe you're thinking about utilizing one of these specific tools, then I linked all the tools that he uses as well. So like the hit tracks, the Rapsodo, backspin tee, 4D motion, blast motion, those are all linked in those show notes that you can go and straight up click. You can see the pricing, you can see the whatever and all of that. So at this time, I'd like to again thank the sponsor of this month's show. So Pocket Radar. Thank you again for sponsoring this show. It's funny because every show that I've done since they've sponsored this episode has been talking along the lines as the technology in baseball or sports in general. There's different types of tools that we can use to better ourselves as athletes. The Pocket Radar being, in my opinion, one of the best all around, because not only is it inexpensive, but it does exactly, I think, what you need if you're a throwing or a hitting athlete to really get a baseline for your progress. We often talk a lot about what are you doing to maximize your potential every single day. And I think with Pocket Radar being one of the most inexpensive tools and being very mobile, that you can bring it anywhere, set it up on a tripod, throw into a fence, write down your velos, or hit into a fence, write down your exit velos, and bada bing, bada boom, I think is what they say it. So I will link the link to Pocket Radar if you're interested in purchasing one of those. And if you are, I encourage you to message me on Instagram before, because maybe I can save you some money just being a listener to this podcast. So again, if you are wanting those links for each and every episode, I will actually just probably start saying it, like as far as the URL goes. But this specific episode, just type in soundcloud.com/The Robby Rowe Show /Ryan Johansen. All right, guys, that's it for my introduction. You can always follow me on Instagram @RobbyRowe12. You can always message me on there if you have any questions about the show or anything we talked about as well. So let's get to episode 41 with Ryan Johansen. Thanks, guys. Much love. Hope you enjoy. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Robby Rowe Show, episode 41. My guest today, Ryan Johansen. Hopefully I pronounced that last name right. Ryan, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, and yeah, you crushed the last name. It's you did it well.
I'm always like so conscious of that, and it's funny. I bet my listeners go, "Gosh, Robby always talks about pronouncing people's names wrong or right." So that's probably annoying. For my audience, Ryan's coming from a car, so if any audio quality, just make sure you Instagram message him at Johansen_baseball and say, dude, your audio sucked. It's not Robby's fault. So I'd highly appreciate that. But Ryan, where in the world are you?
So we have a facility that is about an hour west of Chicago. I'm actually driving en route between the opening of our second facility, so putting up some walls and doing all the grunt work there. So I'm in between facility 2 and facility 1 right now, which are both about an hour outside of Chicago in various directions.
So I didn't realize you had 2. You're making number 2. So that means obviously facility number 1 is doing well, while we're on the subject of facility number 1, when did that start, and kind of what gave you the idea of, hey, I'm going to start a baseball facility?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it goes back. So I recently, if you want like kind of the full story, I literally just put a blog post up on our blog. It's just johansenbaseball.com. I'm sure you can, if you go to the Instagram, you should be able to find it pretty quickly. And it's basically the JB story, and it kind of goes into my underachievement as a player, and then basically trying to figure out. Trying to help younger players and push them along at the high school level, doing some one-on-one stuff. And then that kind of evolved into group stuff, into team stuff. And then we needed our own space, so we got our own space. And then we realized that we had a clientele base kind of out west, so that's how number 2 started. But we never really sat down, at a kitchen table or a round table or with anything, and said, hey, you know what? I want to start a business that's just catered around baseball, and this is what I'm going to do. It kind of just evolved in itself, and God's timing, and that's kind of where we're at today. And we'll do it as long as we can, I guess.
Yeah, I hear you, man. That's awesome how it kind of everything like starts like that, where you don't really have a clear vision in mind. It just kind of over time evolves into that. But you mentioned your underachieving baseball career. Your words, not mine, just for the record. So let's dive into that, dude. Give us a brief outline of your career.
Man, the one thing, is the older you get, the better you were, right? But, for me, the older I get, the worse I realized I was. So, I would say definitely went into it. Like, I played on some really, really good teams, and I was like the 4th starter on my high school team behind a guy who went like full ride in Nebraska, who was a year younger than me, big left-handed pitcher. A guy who got drafted by St. Louis, decided not to take it, then got drafted by the Indians a year later. A guy who played at University of Northern Iowa, and this is like my senior year. My junior year, I was like the 6th, 7th starter behind guys guy was a Big Ten state player of the year. Or he went to Michigan State, he was a Big Ten player of the year at some point. Another guy who's thrown like 92, 93. Like it was like, but I was on this team with these guys, and so I was like, oh yeah, like I contribute, like I should be able to hang with other guys like that, and that's not the case. Like it's not how baseball works. So, throwing low 80s, high 70s, on a good day, that wasn't going to pan out. And then you figure out, the whole velocity era. I went to go play college baseball at University of Pitt Greensburg, and I remember they had the gun on us, and it was the fall inter squads and all that other stuff. And I'm just rearing back, trying to throw as hard as I can, trying to break the gun. Like, I don't care where it is, where it goes. And that was like every day. And there was no arm care routine, though, other than running poles, which, I'm sure that we could have a really long conversation about the myth busting of running poles and stuff like that, which, so that was like, oh, yeah, you threw today, go run a pole. And then it was like, all right, you're really small, so go hit the weight room and go, bench a lot. And then, and I'm not opposed to the bench for baseball players by any means, but the way that we were doing it, and we're doing these bodybuilding, lifting style workouts, running poles, and throwing the baseball as hard as we can 7 days a week, and no warm ups. Like we're just picking it up and going. Something's bound to break down, especially because I was weak in so many other areas that it's. And then you go and you blame the injury, right? So there's a long period of time where you're 19, 20 years old, 21 years old, and you're not really that good, and then you have this scapegoat where you can kind of blame the injury and say that's why you didn't play, that's why you stopped playing, because I don't know, and then you have guys that that get injured, and they're like, what, this isn't the end for me, and then they figure it out, and they they go and they have really long careers despite their injuries. So I was definitely in the first part of that, where I kind of used the injury as a scapegoat, just realized that, man, I'm not that good, and I can't compete my way to I can't compete my way into winning baseball games at the college level. And I'll never forget the very first contact and a real fall game, where we actually went and played somewhere else. I came in relief. I threw 3 balls in a row, and I was like, I'm not gonna walk this dude. I'm not walking my first collegiate hitter. And I threw the baseball right down the middle, and he hit the hardest baseball I've ever seen hit in my life. I felt like I had to duck out of the way of it at my 5'11" and 3/4.
Get you 3/4 in there, kid.
have to. You have to, you know. We're talking about underachievement. I'm gonna take every little piece I can, you know.
I know. We got to build you up next time.
Yeah. And this dude hit this baseball so hard, like it was like at my face. I ducked out of the way, and I feel like my center fielder caught it at the wall. Like it was the hardest hit baseball ever. Like we're like Statcast era, like a 3,000 miles per hour exit velocity. Like the ball was hammered, and and my center fielder goes back, like touches the wall, takes 3 steps in, and like catches it like a routine fly. And I was like, I'm never throwing that pitch ever again. And it was my fastball. Like, oh no. And then I went curveball, like roll over, and was like, I hate baseball. Like I'm gonna die.
Right.
And then you know, you go back and train, and then you know, I guess an injury, you know, kind of bailed me out for a couple of years, where I could say that was the reason why. But no, I just wasn't very good.
Yeah, I hear you. So now let's go ahead and boost the ego, if you don't mind. So what kind of transitioned you from being, you know, again, like I won't try to be rude, but being like a mediocre college player and then going and saying like, I want to like train guys. I want to take what I've learned and kind of, you know, give back to the guys coming up.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest thing is probably like a passion for the game, and honestly, like being the coach I wish I had. And I mean that in like a really sincere way, and I mean that in a lot of different ways, right? Like we change so much about what we do like over the course of a year, just because so much more information comes out, whether it's something that we discover ourselves using data and technology, something that comes out that other people use. And so over the course of, you know, the past, you know, decade really. And so like I was a manager at and I say manager as in like personal assistant, I guess would probably be a better term for it, but they call them managers at, you know, Northern Illinois University for basically from the middle of like January until they started getting games outside in like mid February, like early March, when I transferred back. So when I transferred back home, I got to do that, and the stuff they were doing then was like the same stuff we did in my high school, and it was like hit the back of the net, and let's put on a chart how many times off a tee you can hit the back of the net, and those guys are probably going to be our line drive hitters. And it was like, you look back at that stuff, and it's like archaic now. And so I think just trying to like be the coach I wish I had in the development sense, but also in like, hey, like I'm in your corner, and I'll let you know when you suck. I'm not going to tell you that you're good and hang, and I'm also going to tell you when you're good too. You know, when you have a good outing, like I'm going to celebrate with you. So I think just the combination of that, but that's probably the best way to describe, you know, why I got into it. I wanted to be the coach I wish I had.
That's dope. So I need to like paint a picture for the audience here. So can you give us like what does this time frame look like? What year did you graduate high school? What year were you like in college? And then what years were it, or how old were you like when you kind of started diving into the realm of like teaching baseball?
It all happened really fast. So I graduated high school in 2008. I went to University of Pitt Greensburg, and I went to go play in the fall out there. And you know, that's kind of where like the shoulder stuff started. And we went and we traveled and we did some stuff. And then we started doing this like really weird like fundraising thing and like study tables too. And I remember I was always like, I don't want to go to study tables, and that was kind of like a point of contention as well. And I had this kind of like nagging shoulder injury, so I was you know, that's part of it. And there was so basically I get back in, you know, I graduated high school in 2008. I get back to Illinois where I transferred back, and I was a kind of a personal assistant / you know, volunteer team manager at Northern Illinois at 2010. And then 2011 is kind of when I really got into like the lessons and things like that. And I was coaching at this like park district agency type deal. So they would travel and we would go to different park districts. At this point I'm like 20 years old, and we're going to different park districts, and we're working with really young kids, and we're teaching them all these different sports things. And basically it's just an hourly job, but it was coaching. So to me, I thought it was beneficial. And the one thing I will say about that is that if you're trying to coach kids ever and you can't explain it to a 4-year-old, or you can't teach a 4-year-old some of the complex stuff you're going to teach an elite athlete, you don't need to try. But if you can't figure out how to get a 4-year-old to swing a baseball bat, like you probably should start there. Like that's a really simple thing to do. And I don't mean swing it in any kind of specific way, but just line his feet upright and swing.
Dude, so that's an interesting topic, because that's actually something that I don't really talk a whole lot about my show. Like I would say like my general audience is like high school, college, some dads and everyone out there looking to get information, obviously. But I never really stopped to think, like, what does that look like for instruction for, say, like, a very young T-ball guy? Like, do you believe that it's necessary to start that young, as far as not just start like playing the game, but start seeking out instruction if you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old?
No, I don't think instruction necessarily. I think it's going to end up being too much. Like, all they want to do at that age is feel like they got the win, right? So winning for them is not doing a pirouette off a tee and missing the baseball completely. It's not when you say eye on the ball and they actually put their eye on the ball. So it's more of, you have to figure out, like, each kid's got its own really weird cue. And one of those cues might be like, ride the Aladdin magic carpet. And like, to them, like, your audience,
that's my cue.
That means yeah, right. And so that's kind of where, like, and then the next kid comes up, like, he gets a hit and you point him to first base, you say run that way, and the next kid comes up and his cue might be like, something along the lines of, swing this like you would throw your sister down the stairs or something. I don't know, like something really weird, because his sister.
Wow, you went there.
Yeah, right. Like, but like, like him and his sister just got into a fight, and they just came up to me and pulled on my shirt and was like, "He threw me down the stairs yesterday." And the mom's like, "Good luck, bye, see ya." And you're like, you have to like make up this cue for this kid, like. So, and I think that's man, I have so many of those stories. If you want to do a whole show on just like create, like I really want to write a book at some point.
I'm gonna scrap. I'm scrapping everything I had planned, and we're just gonna do stories of like moms dropping their kids off.
And so, but yeah, I mean, and I think if you can't adapt to that simplicity of and weirdness, like when you get a kid who's gonna look at you when you talk about separation or some of these like Franz Bosch talks about, like, the body doesn't care what cue you use. Like, you have to figure out, like, it's true. Like, you could say anything, but if it makes sense to the kid, it makes sense.
Hey, who's that?
I would say, like,
who'd you just say so I can write it down?
Franz Bosch. So he's got this great book. He talks about, basically constraint-led coaching and, how the body's actually going to learn. So like a simple way is like a zoo tiger gets fed everything. You think about like your 30-minute lesson, and I got this from Chad Longworth, so if Chad's listening, sorry man, I stole it. But basically, zoo tiger, you wake up, you get food, you take a nap, you get food, you wake back up, and you're just like, people look at you and you just get to lay down. You have this little like fake jungle and you're safe. And then you have the jungle tiger, which is like, dude, he wakes up and he's hunting, and if he misses his prey, like, he's got to figure out how to eat that day, and you're going to fail, and you're going to fail, and you're going to fail, but who's more prepared in adverse environments? Like, if the zoo shuts down and that zoo tiger has to go into the jungle, like, he's probably going to have a really hard time. So, and that's essentially the concepts of what we're doing in constraint-led coaching and, things of that nature. That's, I don't know, does that answer your question? I know you know who he is, so is that... Yeah,
well, I just want to make sure that I get, like, the spelling right, because, like I told you at the beginning of the show, like, I will try to link that and his book, if anyone is curious, in the show notes, so they can go ahead and check that out. But, yeah, that's actually a really good analogy. That's something that I use, too. Like, you said... So Chad's your business partner?
He's not my business partner, actually. It's so he's on our podcast a little bit. He actually was the guy who inspired us. He was like, dude, we should do a podcast. And I was like, dude, we should. And he's like, I'll come on and, we'll figure it out. And then he's like, I just don't have the time. And I was like, Nate Pearson's my business partner. I was like, Nate, we need to figure out a podcast. And he was like, I got it, bro. Like, I'm going to start it. And then we took way longer than it probably should have, because we're not that smart. And put it together. And,
I was going to say, though, like, you talk really well. Like, not to, like, again, I'm still trying to boost your ego from the bad baseball career, but like, I'm sure like a lot of people are listening that are like, oh, he says he's got a podcast. Where can they find your podcast?
On SoundCloud right now. We still have the just application, or it's just an application, speaking well. But I haven't done that yet. So SoundCloud, it's called Damage at the Dish. Damage at the Dish. It'd be way simpler if we called it like Johansen Baseball Podcast, though, don't you think?
No, just because I like the catchiness to that, but I am curious, like, as a pitcher, why have that title?
Because pitching's way cooler. I mean, I don't know, like we're chasing nukes in our facility, and we're challenging pitchers to throw really hard and try to get our guys out, and it's just like, I don't know. I'm definitely team hitter as a coach, and I'm not really sure. I think that's part of what makes me a better hitting coach. I think is, and not to say that like we don't do the pitching side well, but I think that it's like an outside looking in, and Cressy kind of talks about it from from a strength conditioning standpoint. Like part of why he's good at what he does because he didn't have any like other bias, and not to say I didn't have any hitting bias when I first started doing this, but it's more of I was way more open-minded in the beginning, and then being open-minded in the hitting world really made me be open-minded in the throwing world as well. Big thanks to I coached Judson University for a little bit, and thanks to Rich Benjamin for really like teaching me how to learn. He's now the coach at Indiana Wesleyan. If you're like a really good player and you want to like out to him, but you better be good because he recruits only good players.
So I want to go back to something you said, dude. And you said specifically, and I quote, you're chasing nukes at your facility. So let's dive in, dude. So what does chasing nukes look like? What are you teaching to your kids at this facility? Because everyone just goes, what, dude? Like, we're supposed to hit homers and only homers? Like, what do you got, man?
Oh, man, that's funny. And Chad's going to be so mad because I'm stealing all of his lines. So I got that from the ABCA at Chad Longworth. He's probably listening to this like, dude, he's a carbon copy of me minus the cool Southern accent and great long hair. Anyways, yeah, that's basically what it is. I mean, we have high intent swings. So if you think about like the pull down, and this is the best way that I can explain it, over a podcast without going into like super crazy detail, is you think about the pull down and how it's one of the most athletic movements you can do, in the throw when you're trying to figure out how to organize your body, stop your body, accelerate, decelerate, and all these movements. So we have kind of a similar approach hitting wise. Like we're not like, we'll do Happy Gilmore's, but that's not like the staple of our program, but like we're trying to increase bat speed. So we're trying to increase exit velocity. We're trying to basically take a swing and figure out how much power we can actually extract out of the body or out of the person, and then let's figure out how to control it later. So we miss a lot in our facility. Like that's just something that we do. And sometimes like when players first come in, they don't understand that kind of like longevity process, but then eventually we take those same really chaotic swings where we're just trying to hit the baseball as hard as we possibly can, and it doesn't matter where it goes, but we found that one of the cues that we use is hit it as far as you can. So when we say like chase nukes, hit this ball 500 feet, all of a sudden we get a little bit more a little bit better attack angle. We're not super steep, we're still staying within the realm of where we want to be, but now all of a sudden our bat speed's increasing because we're actually trying to hit the ball 500 feet. We're not just trying to hit it. So basically build the swing up in a way that's going to be really powerful, really controlled. Controlled, we could argue the definition of that, but basically something you can do, and then let's figure out how to repeat it versus, hey, let's repeat something. Let's hit balls off a tee. Let's do, flips, and then let's figure out why your mechanics don't look good against an 82 mile an hour slider as they do against, an 87 mile an hour fastball or whatever, so that's kind of that's the context behind it. Swing really hard, try to hit the ball really far, and let's figure out the
dude. I really love that, and I love it for multiple reasons. Because one, I think it's no secret in 2018, like you essentially have to hit homers. Like not have to, right? Like you can obviously be a multifaceted player, but hitting homers like will boost your career. Like there's nothing more powerful than that in today's game. But then what I also love about that is it's almost the same thing correlated to the pitching side, right? Because that's kind of where my bread and butter is. And I look at pitching, and I look at kind of like the old school mentality as far as like, hey man, like we got to control, we got to command our fastball, and we got to put it there, and inner third, outer third, like all good, 88, 90, like that whole thing's out of the equation now as well. Where it's like, hey, let's find where your body is maximizing its power output. So like, let's find where we are at our hardest throw. And then once we establish that and we get that velocity up, then we can like worry about, where the frickin' thing's going. And you see it in like organizational ball too, where like the guys that are 95 plus are getting a bunch more shots and chances than the guys that are, 87 to 88, 89 with, say like a 70 command, 60, 70 command, but are putting up good numbers, right? Because they see like big picture. So that's what I love about the game, man. And that's what I love about the dynamic between hitting and pitching is it's very similar. And I think it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, and I think it's way harder to hit now, too, in the sense of, like, string together hits. And, of course, I'm saying that as Boston is just, like, getting hit after hit after hit after hit, but they're also hitting for power, too.
Right.
But they're also, I don't think, like, their whole thing is do damage, right? Like, they're not, the announcers can say whatever they want. Like, I don't think JD Martinez, who's literally said, I'm trying to hit the ball in the air, like, he's not trying to fly out, so where in the air is he trying to hit it? And he's, you know what I mean? Like, he's trying to go that way, and then when he misses a little bit, your miss hits when you swing really hard and have really good bat speed because you're, throwing 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, like 100, and you miss it a little bit or you're a little bit late, like, now that's a base hit up the middle because we attacked it and we were trying to be aggressive, not because we were scared and just trying to, like, slap at it because it's really hard.
Did you see that video of JD Martinez talking about his, like, evolution?
Yeah, man, he's awesome. Like, bro. I love
bro, dude, like that guy is something else, man. So I'll link that video in the show notes for those of you who want to check that out. And Ryan, I saw you had a post on your Instagram, right? And that was JD Martinez's, like, what was that, like launch angle, exit velocity, like all those stats?
Yeah, I did at some point. So they talked about, his average launch angle went down this year is essentially what it was. And his, the MLB definition of barreling balls, have you looked into that yet? The MLB standard of what a barreled ball is?
I haven't looked into what the MLB clarifies a standard as, but I was just going to say, dude, I geek out like hardcore about all those statistics. Like the StatCast era, like it's unreal.
Yeah, and so the barreled ball for the MLB, and maybe before you link in the show notes, because like I said, I'm in my car. I'm not that smart, so open book is good for me. I try to figure out and where to look, and I bookmark things to remember. But off the top of my head, it's 98 miles an hour between like 26 and 30 degrees.
So
essentially what a barreled ball is. And then the harder you hit it, the more the launch angle range increases. So if you go like 100, I think it's like 23 degrees is what it comes down to.
Would you know the website to check that data out?
It was on MLB.com, or if you Google like barrel ball definition MLB standard, like it'll come up right away. Like,
okay,
it's like one of the first ones. But yeah, it's on Baseball Savant, or it's Fangraphs, one of those ones where.
Yeah, well, I know Fangraphs does a great job of relaying that information.
Man, they you can get lost. You talking about geeking out, man? You can start. You can wake up really early, and yeah, dude. I mean, I've woken up early before, gotten a cup of coffee on, and like I start looking at this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna spend like an hour, like
done
just researching stuff, doing a blog post.
Day's gone.
And now all of a sudden it's like 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, whoa, like I didn't even eat lunch yet. Like,
oh, dude, that's so funny. I do the same thing, man. I do it with like I try to like correlate it all into like my business. So like this podcast, right? Like I sit down. So for instance, like I have my first cup of coffee right now. I'm taking it down, taking it to the house, and I'm going and I'm doing this podcast. And then after it, I'll like edit it all up. But I totally geek out about the things like, so specifically we talk about, right? So I'll go in and I'll Google the barreled ball thing. And then that'll take me down another rabbit hole of like, finding something to do and correlating that to pitching and then seeing like those numbers. And then it'll be like 4 o'clock and I'll be like, oh, I guess I'll go put a tank top on and go work out now. And then my day's gone.
Right. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, man. I think that's what makes us, like able to survive in this game, because like it's not easy. It's just a matter of you have some guys who are, nope, I have 30 years experience, when really it's 1 year of experience lived 30 times, and they're just going to stick and live there. And then people are going to figure out that like 10 years down the road, they've done the same thing every single year for 10 years and they didn't get any better. And I think players want people like that. I think players want a coach who's willing to say, I don't know, let's go figure it out together, or let's meet back tomorrow. Like, I'm going to look into some stuff and then I'll have a better answer for you, versus, just like preaching that they have it all and they're the guru and, all this other stuff. And, I really think like our kids thrive off the fact that like we say, I don't know, like we're not that smart, like we're not geniuses and we'll figure it out for you.
Dude, so what it is like to me is, even I'm going through this transition in my life, is like the ability to check like the pride and check the ego at the door, right? And approach a scenario or a situation with like the ability to not only adapt, but to be just super open to that. And I think not only does that show like humility, but that shows in the like to the other person that you're giving a lesson to or you're coaching, like it shows that you can like both grow in that aspect together. And I think that just demands like so much more respect than someone who, I'm sure you've seen it too, like those coaches that, walk around to theme music and they puff their chest out and they think they know everything. And it's like those guys are so much less approachable than the other guy that we're talking about, as far as, being like, hey, like you said, like, I don't know, man, but do you want to dive in this stuff together? And like, let's grow. I constantly talk about on this show how we have the ability to like evolve every single day, and having the chance to open up a book or open up something online that you didn't know when you started, and then at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I'm pretty good at this stuff. So I think that's like a huge, nugget for those of you listening. Like, be the coach that's open to that. Be the coach that's, able to say, I don't know. I think that's huge when it comes to, molding young minds, I would say.
Yeah, and I think, for like, you have a high school coach, right, who's trying to create buy-in. You have a college coach who's trying to create buy-in, to their program, right? So they want guys to think that they can go to them for the answers. And I get why it's tough, I guess, and like some of those things. And then on the business side, you want people to pay for your expertise. So you're trying to say like, I don't know. And then they might, you're almost like afraid that they might
exactly
else to somebody who gives them that answer. So, but at the same time, like you hit it on the head. I don't want my business to be surrounded by the fact that people think that they need to come here to get the answers. Like, and Chad talks about this, I'm bringing up Longworth again. If you haven't checked out Chad Longworth, he's got some great stuff.
All right. Do I check him out on Instagram? Would you know his Instagram account by heart?
I will pull it up right now. But yeah, I think it's just Longworth Baseball or Longworth, it's Clong Baseball, C, and then just, like Clong, like.
Oh,
Clong,
dude.
but,
can we rant about him for a second? Cause I'm a little mad at him.
Oh, are you? Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so this is going to be on air, and I'm not scared to say it, but I Instagram messaged him, man, and was like, "Yo, I love the stuff he's putting out." Right? Like he's good, like with what he does on his Instagram, and I do encourage everyone listening to go check that Instagram out. But I messaged him, bro, and like he freaking left me on red or left me on scene. I was like, "Yo, get on the pod, man! Come on!" And I got nothing back. So when you talk to him, be like, "Yo, Robby Rose got an issue with you, dog. Like you guys need to hash it out over a podcast, episode 42. Let's roll."
I'll definitely do that, man. I guess, man. I'm extra humbled now, man. I would have answered your message before mine, so I'm humbled. But yeah, and then, just going back to that, like, I don't, like you said, man, if players want to grow, they have to be in environments where they can grow. And if the coaches aren't growing, you're going to get to a point where you're going to run out of stuff to do. And so, there's obviously the staples and things you want to keep doing because it works. And then there's the stuff where it's like, hey, like, how do we take you from 100 to 110? Like, how do we give you that next little boost? Like, is there a mobility leak somewhere? Because the video looks good. The blast metrics look good. The hit tracks data looks good, but like, is there more in the tank? And then you have to start to like unravel some of that stuff. And like, at some point you might go, like, in that process, you might go from like 100 to 97.
Yeah.
Right. So you're losing a little bit, but you're testing it out because you're trying to get to 110 versus a guy who's, just saying, oh, you're at 100, you're really good. Like, we're done. And then you're hitting 100 with a BB core bat, and you're expected to do it the next level with a dead tree.
Right.
I think it's.
Yeah, I think it's, and it goes back to like constantly evolving, and again, like not being satisfied with what you're doing. So you say like, I know you go to your, for me personally, like I go to your Instagram account. For those of you listening, if you want to go do that right now, it's Johansen_baseball. And I check out like your bio, and you got a lot of tools that you're utilizing. So what are some of those tools, or what are all the tools that you're utilizing, and how does that essentially, really better your athletes?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because the tools that we use basically prove to me that my eyes lie to me all the time.
Yeah.
And so like I'll be like, yeah, that swing looked really hard, like great bat speed, and it's like, oh wait, it's like 5 miles an hour, like below what it should have been. I'm like, never mind, like blast sensors, that's otherwise, like So I've learned to look at the information before I open my mouth. But no, that's one of them. It's a blast sensor. It's probably the most basic thing we use. You can literally, buy them online. It's a $150 sensor. And I said it the other day, if I'm a college coach or a high school coach, like in the fall when I have kids for a small period of time, it's one of the first things I'm doing. I'm working with a freshman at the college level right now who didn't get any fall opportunities, and he has like tremendous blast numbers. Like it's something where like I don't care if he can't like quote unquote hit yet, or if it looks weird or whatever. Like I want to take a chance on somebody who's got some tools going on, and maybe figure it out from there. But that's another, going back to the tools. We've got hit track, so that's basically all ball data for the basic things. It'll conjure up all these crazy reports, launching reports, things of that. Basically, after you make contact, what does the baseball do? Blast metrics are all bat metrics. So basically, from the time you start your downswing till you make contact through your finish, that's going to measure all of what you're doing. So we know exactly what the bat's doing, know exactly what the ball's doing, and then we use something called 4D motion, and that's if you've heard of KVS, it's basically the less expensive version of kinematic sequencing and things like that. It works on an iPad versus like a software. It's called 4D motion, and that's where the sensors go in the body. You can create basically a 4D image. The sensors and whatnot. We look at kinematic sequencing, rear shoulder load, like some other things that it looks into based on pro numbers and stuff like that. That's kind of the hitting side of it. On the pitching side of it, and I'm sure you've talked about it before, just looking at your social media stuff, is the Rapsodo, so pitch design, spinning the baseball, spin axis, or RPMs. And I will say we don't use that as much, and you kind of have to earn the right to use that in our facility. Mm-hmm. We talked about here on the show, like velocity plays. So we're really looking more at like, hey, if you don't throw at least like 85, like, and this is going to like starting at like the 15, 16-year-old,
right? We're
probably not going to any pitch design stuff. Like let's focus on like the meat and potatoes. Like let's learn how to throw hard and then control it later, and then let's look at some crazy stuff. So you throw really hard with some wicked movement,
right?
But taking a kid who's taking me as a college player essentially and putting me on pitch design, like might help me get like one or two more outs, but like my career's still over if I don't throw harder.
Right. So exactly.
That's where we look at that. So we've got this cool thing called U-Hit. So we were like the fourth facility like ever to get it, which I thought was really cool. I'm big, like I like to be first guy.
Right. And, me too.
And then we had the first Bluetooth remote from them too. So we were the fourth facility overall to get the software, and then we had the first Bluetooth remote. And I was like, he brought in to demo it at our facility, and I was like, can I buy this off you? And he like just threw a price. It was a funny time. But what that does, that's pitch recognition. So even though it's two-dimensional, because you're looking at it on a screen, I like the reaction time. It was developed by neurosurgeons rather.
Right.
And it's basically you're measuring where it's giving you an anticipated time of decision. So if we're deciding where to swing further and further and further away from us, and we're getting accurate results, that's probably a positive, kind of trend to look at. So we use that. It's called U-Hit. It's called the actual company is called DeServo like Industries or something like that. But if you just look up like the letter U and then hit, you'll find some information on it.
I'll link all of that too. Like I'll for my audience, like everything we're talking about here as far as tools, and you're interested either in accumulating information about these tools, or if you're interested in like purchasing these tools, you can find those again in the show notes.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's but yeah, I mean that's really the meat and potatoes of it. You know, I would love to get into some more stuff. Basically, if it exists, I want it. If it's going to give us more information, I want it.
I love it.
If I can afford it, if I can't afford it, my wife's going to yell at me. I'll get it anyway. That's been, you know, and then the simple stuff too. Like we have a spinball machine that's going to shoot out crazy stuff. I've got some cool overlays, and that's like the same setting too. Like sometimes you just don't know where it's going to go, and part of that's the fact that the baseball when we picked them up got hit 100 miles an hour, so
yeah,
it's a little bit different than, you know, a brand new baseball. But you know, that's simple, you know, stuff, and you know, we have hack attacks, and I will say the coolest thing I have that was kind of like got really lucky with is we trained this kid, and his dad is he's an electronics like recycle person. So he comes across, like, he goes into like corporate buildings and will take out like some really cool technology. And he was like, dude, I got this really cool thing. Like, all I want to do is like barter for training. And I was like 100%, like, I'm down. And I went in, and he has this like smart screen, and and we have it now, but it's a 75-inch touch screen like TV. And so what it does is we hook it up to HitTracks, and so now when we do like our video reviews and where you can like color on the screen, I can do that on this like massive 75-inch TV. And so instead of doing like video review like on your phone, like you know we used to do with like lessons where we just do slow-mo and we kind of back, and you know the kid's trying to look over your shoulder, and then you got maybe like mom or dad are on the other shoulder, and you're trying to explain stuff on this, like, I guess phones are huge now, or tablets or whatever. Like now it's like everybody can see, and then we can almost do like even other people can learn from, you know, what kid A did, and kid B is just watching, saying like, hey, I think I kind of do that too. Like I can kind of, you know, you can see him working through food.
Right.
We go over video. It's pretty cool, man. It's but yeah, that's something that if you can invest in that, like, it's not something that will like make or break your facility, but it's really cool to have, and I'm really lucky with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, dude, that like fell into your lap. That's super cool. That's super cool. So hey, dude, I want to be respectful of your time. I absolutely love everything we touched on throughout the 38 minutes. This thing just flies by, dude. But again, I thank you for coming on, first of all. Second of all, before we get off, if you can, go ahead and blast out like all your social media links, not links, but all your social medias as far as your Instagram, Twitter, websites, blogs, whatever, for my audience to check you out at.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So the best place where we're like most engaged is definitely like Instagram. So that's Johansen_baseball. I am on Twitter. It's RPJ, P is in Patrick. So RPJ1317 on Twitter. I'll get kind of sarcastic there, so sorry if we get into it a little bit. Twitter's kind of a weird animal. And then I've got a blog. It's just Johansen Baseball, and then our website is johansenbaseball.com. On our website, I will say we have a drill library. We're upgrading it, and we got some, like, in another 2 weeks, we're gonna have like a drill library on steroid kind of option for some remote people. But
let's go.
That'll be something that if you're listening to this and you're interested, definitely hit us up. We'll be able to do some cool stuff in a couple weeks here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, Ryan, again, thanks for your time, dude, and I'll sign you off the air. But appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Robby.
All right, guys, that's another episode of The Robby Rowe Show. Do me a favor, if you liked the episode, or even if you didn't like it, go ahead and leave me a review on whatever platform you're listening to. Not only does it help me out with popularity on my show, but it also helps me out as a host of this podcast. Sometimes I don't know if I'm getting better, if I'm getting worse, and I need y'all's opinions. So go ahead and leave a review and let me know what you thought. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next time, Robby Roland, The Robby Rowe Show. Your boy's out. Later.